Welcome to Legal Keys, unlocking time, revenue, and results. The podcast that connects you with the people, technologies, and trending topics shaping the modern legal landscape. From cutting-edge AI innovations to high-growth marketing strategies and everything in between. Legal Keys is your go-to resource for actionable insights. Brought to you by Faster Outcomes and hosted by Tim Sawyer, two-time Inc. 500 co-founder entrepreneur. We're here to help you navigate the tools and trends driving success in today's legal world.
Well, welcome to Season 2, Episode 6 of Legal Keys. I'm your host, Tim Sawyer. If you're joining us for the first time, we've got a great episode for you today, and we hope you stick with us. For those of you who've been with us for a while, we appreciate your loyalty and for continuing to tune in. And boy, wait till you hear this. Today, we've got a special episode teed up for you featuring J.A. Tittle as our guest host. J.A. is the VP of Client Success at Faster Outcomes, guiding more than 300 lawyers on how to effectively use the platform to drive better outcomes for their clients and stronger financial performance for their firms. You are absolutely going to love this guy. And you're also going to love his guest. His guest is none other than Rob Levine. Rob Levine's a good friend. He's also a top 1% personal injury lawyer with more than 500 employees across his organizations. He is a successful entrepreneur leading multiple ventures in the legal and medical space. Many of you know Rob. You're going to love this episode. Rob shares his journey adopting AI within his own firm and how he's helped personal injury initiatives at Faster Outcomes. What an incredible blessing to have him on the team. He helps lawyers integrate the platform into nearly every aspect of their operation. Rob's going to share his journey with you today. This is a great conversation for anyone looking to use AI to optimize their performance in their firm, increase efficiency, and ultimately drive better results for you, your employees, and your bottom line. We hope you tune in and enjoy. As always, Legal Keys is brought to you by Faster Outcomes. Faster Outcomes is the ultimate AI-powered legal intelligence platform for lawyers and law firms of all shapes and sizes. You're in for a treat. Like I said, hope you enjoy.
Good day, everyone. I'm J.A. Tittle. I'm the head of client success here with Faster Outcomes. And today I have the absolute pleasure of filling in as guest host and interviewing attorney Rob Levine. So a little bit of background about Rob. Rob is the founder and managing partner of Rob Levine Law Group, one of the most recognized personal injury attorney practices in the Northeast region. And he's also the VP of personal injury here at Faster Outcomes. Starting as a solo practitioner, Rob built his firm into a high-volume, high-value operation, known for its disciplined approach to case management, medical coordination, and settlement outcomes. Beyond the courtroom, Rob is a sought-after voice on the business of personal injury law, how to maximize case value, how to build systems that scale, and how to turn a growing firm into an operationally excellent one. He's known for his belief that real value in a PI case is built in the medical records themselves, not the demand letter, and that any firm, regardless of size, can dramatically improve its outcomes with the right processes and the right tools. Rob, I'm looking forward to chatting with you today.
Jay, thanks for having me. Good to see you again.
Absolutely. Just to get started, we wanted to kind of talk about your journey as an attorney, right? You started off as a single practitioner and then grew to be one of the most prominent attorneys in the Northeast. If you wouldn't mind, just kind of walk us through what your start looked like as an organization and as an attorney to start.
Yeah, I don't know that I'm one of the most prominent attorneys, but thanks for the compliment. I mean, what my start looked like. So my start was when I graduated from law school and passed the bar. I was going to open a law practice with Anthony Gemma, and his family was the owners of Gem Plumbing and Heating and a lot of real estate and some other things. And so at the last minute, his family asked him to come work for Gem Plumbing and Heating, not as an attorney. He never practiced law, but really on focusing on helping to grow the business. And so I was going to open my own office. I was actually going to rent space from Gordon Fox. This was before all of the issues happened. And at the last minute, his brothers asked to meet me, and I went up onto Route 146 in Lincoln at the ice rink and sat down with his brothers, and they offered me a job. And so basically they wanted me to work as in-house counsel to Gem Plumbing and Heating, sit on the executive board, help grow the plumbing company. And simultaneously, they said that I could open the law office and grow this law practice that I wanted to do. My only arrangement had to be that Anthony was going to be my partner in the law practice, even though he would never practice. So that's really the true beginning story. That's how it started.
I can imagine that there may be some early challenges or early struggles. Can you kind of walk us through what your experience was? Because I'm sure there are a lot of attorneys out there today starting off just like you. Maybe you can help provide some insight into what your challenges were in the beginning.
I mean, I hope there aren't too many people that started like me. My first office was in a closet. So I literally had like 4 foot by 3 foot space in their building, and it was really tight. And I was trying to learn how to do a little of everything. So when I first started the law practice, I think we did some family law. I did criminal. I actually did a couple bankruptcies. We did a lot of commercial corporate work, a little bit of personal injury, landlord tenant law. I did a lot of because they owned a lot of real estate. So I did a lot of the landlord tenant law. So it was kind of trial by fire because I never worked for anyone else. And other than asking questions of other lawyers, hey, how do I do this? Or how do I do that? Or the first day I went to landlord tenant court and there's people everywhere. You don't even know where to stand, right? And so this guy, Murray Garaboff, who was a very, very well-known attorney for landlord tenant, hey, Kit, you new here? And he helped me through my first hearing. And then whenever I had questions, it was always helpful. So I did a little of everything in the beginning. And in the beginning, I didn't even have a secretary. At first, it was just me. And then imagine half my day was spent on Gem Plumbing and Heating, right? Dealing with their accounts receivable, setting up practices for collections, mechanics liens, all of their corporate issues, just a ton of stuff that I had no idea what I was doing. So kind of just trying to figure it out day by day, trying to call people, ask questions, and not really a great way to start. So when we hire a lawyer, we, from my experience, make sure it's never the sink or swim. Lots of law firms still sink or swim approach, right? So we put people through training and we make sure they know what they're doing and teach them one piece at a time and make them comfortable, because there's just no reason to have to start your career that way. It's unnecessary.
What I'm curious about personally is what was the turning point for you? Because it seems like you started off and you practiced everything, right? But then you also picked a path. And then when you decided on that path, you became very good at that, became very efficient, became very effective, and just grew that. So what was the turning point for you in kind of making the decision into personal injury?
So I don't know. I mean, the story sounds perfect, right? But I don't really know that I would say as much as I picked a path as I quickly got rid of shit I didn't like doing. So I picked a path by default. Part of it was based on, scalability. What could I really be able to grow? What I liked doing. But I quickly before I made that choice, is I got rid of what I didn't like to do. So I think the first thing that went out the window was criminal law. And the reason I started when I opened doing criminal is because I had a college professor at Roger Williams who ran the criminal defense clinic, Andy Horowitz. And so was a great, great mentor. And so I did the criminal defense clinic for a semester in law school. So I got exposed to it. And obviously I'm a retired police officer, right? So I understood that side of it. And I thought, oh, this could be interesting. It just wasn't for me, right? So I remember the exact moment I decided I'm done with criminal law. So a client comes in, had an appointment, was charged with first-degree child molestation. And so he's sitting in front of me and I'm thinking to myself, like, how am I even going to consider taking this case? And it turns out he had been previously charged with the same charge. And he's trying to tell me how that was false and his neighbors made it up. And I thought to myself, yeah, there's just no way. So I asked a friend of mine who did only criminal law and a lot of it. When I was a police officer, he was an AG. So he prosecuted cases and then he switched to criminal defense. So I said, how do you deal with it? So he says, well, someone sits down in front of me and I look at the case and I look at them and I think about how much can I charge them? He said, and then I double the number. And if they can pay that, I do it. And this is for horrific crimes, right? Not just an everyday case. And so I thought, And that's it. He said, yeah, that's pretty much it. I think everybody deserves a defense. And if they can afford to pay me some outrageous number, I can take child molestation, murder, any capital crime. So I'm like, okay, that's good for you. Doesn't work for me. First thing to go.
So you kind of whittled it down, I guess to say, and ended up focusing on personal injury. But also you talked about having some guidance, right? You had a mentor in the beginning that you just luckily ran into when you were going to court one day and then didn't quite know where to stand. Separately from there, you also mentioned that because of your experience, you put all of your new attorneys to your firm through a training process to make sure they understand and get acclimated. So I kind of want to get your insight how you took that approach and applied it to growing your practice. At some point, you had to add your first attorney or your first assistant and your first paralegal, and then you had to grow from there. Describe what that looked like and what your methodology was.
So first of all, I whittled it down. It was actually personal injury and residential real estate. And I guess some commercial because of Gem Plumbing, but was residential real estate. And that happened because I had a friend who was a mortgage broker. And she said, oh, you opened your office. Congratulations. If you'd like, I can send you some closings. And I thought, sure, that would be great. Until she started sending, and I thought, holy shit, how do you do a closing? And so again, I reached out to people and just made phone calls, and some people helped me. But that was very scalable. And we were doing a lot of closings. But really, the majority of the line of closings that we got connected to were back then called subprime. Do you even know? You're young. Do you even know what subprime closings are?
To a degree. Maybe you can explain it for the audience, not for me.
Subprime was pre-2008, between 2000 and 2008, for me anyway. It ended in 2008. Subprime was basically those banks like Ameriquest that were charging crazy amount of points, first mortgages that had just crazy terms, interest only payment, 120% loan to value. So imagine your house is worth $100,000. And the bank said, sure, we're going to give you $120,000, more of a mortgage than your house is worth. The one I loved, which was what we called the no-doc loan. No-doc loans, for those of us in the industry back then, used to call it the liar's loan. Literally, you could get a mortgage by signing an affidavit and an agreement without ever proving any documentation. Nothing on your income, nothing from your employer, nothing. You literally just signed for it. And so I had salespeople back then. We had a caddy stretch limo that we used to pick up mortgage brokers. And back then, I know it's hard not to laugh, right? So back then, there was no licensing requirements for mortgage brokers. And so they were hiring kids, literally kids like 18 to 25-year-olds off of used car lots. So those kids were then selling mortgages, if you can imagine.
Wow.
And then I had 3 salespeople who were going out and taking those kids out. So we took them, we had a corporate membership at a golf club. We had tickets to all sorts of sporting events and rock concerts. The limo would drive them, and we built relationships, and people started sending us more and more and more closings. And then we started doing closings nationwide. So like mortgage companies like Ameriquest, which is across the whole country, were doing mailaways. So a refinance, and we would mail the docs to a notary in another state. They would go to the person's home, sign all the documents, send it back to us. And yeah, my license plate was Legal One on our caddy stretch limo. And then literally one day I walk into my office, and back then we had fax machines. You know what a fax machine is?
I don't know what those are,
right?
but yeah.
Row of fax machines, and they used to just be printing title orders, which were coming in from the mortgage companies to start a deal, and nothing's printing, nothing's running. Like, I'm like, wow, what is going on? And they're like, yeah, it's been really slow this morning. Not a lot coming in. And I had a TV in my office back then. I turned the TV on, and like, that's it. The world ended as we know it. So like the FBI were raiding offices, the whole real estate industry collapsed. It went from feast to famine overnight. That was the end of real estate. And thank God we had personal injury. We started doing Social Security, and then later added veterans disability. and workers' compensation. So those are really the four things we do today.
And then from there, you were able to grow the business beyond that point. So I know that we've had conversations outside of this, and you talk about case value versus case volume. Obviously, you grew the business, you did some marketing, some advertising, but you also did good work and you were marketing the work that you did, right? The successful outcomes that you were able to get. So for everyone else that hasn't had the chance to speak with you like I have, to get your take on case value versus case volume and overall growth of an organization, and your take on how to optimize your business, because you've done both. You've grew your organization, and then from there, you've optimized and done so much.
There's a lot packed into that question. Case
Yeah.
value, case volume, growth of an office. So the case value, I really had no idea what that meant back in day, way back in the beginning. And so we created more of a production model, I would say. We were incentivizing attorneys to move cases quickly because we were looking at time on desk. We focused less on treatment, assuming that the doctors were handling that properly, right?
Mhm.
And when someone was discharged, then we wanted to focus on moving their case quickly because the client always wants their money fast. And so we were using a lot of chiropractors back then. And it's very formulaic if you look at a chiropractor's treatment. We had these models built and handled cases in that way. I'm much less focused on time
Mhm.
as I am on value. And value is important because it really ties to making sure that the client, right, is getting all of the medical treatment that they need. And before you consider settling a case, that you've really maximized their treatment and gotten to the bottom line. So doctors are amazing. They spend a tremendous amount of education and years going to medical school and learning how to treat patients. The problem in our medical system is it's broken because you have insurance companies paying less to doctors for treatment. The cost of medical insurance for malpractice is going up. And doctors have to squeeze as many patients into an hour visit as they can. If you go to a primary care doctor today, you're lucky if you get 5 minutes. And so that's not because the doctor doesn't care, in my opinion. And it's not because the doctor isn't trying to do the best he can in his practice. It's because legitimately, in order for him to make money and pay for a medical school that cost him $300,000, he has to see clients, patients every 5 minutes. And you have people under the doctor seeing patients. So you have a nurse practitioner, a physician assistant. They miss a lot of things because they don't have the time to talk to the patient and have the patient explain all of the symptomology and what's changed since the last visit. And it becomes very factory driven. So for instance, a traumatic brain injury, right? That requires 3-4 different doctors sometimes to see a patient to really figure out what's going on. Because we talk about how it's affecting their headaches and their vision, how they're hearing, how it's affecting their balance, their psychology of their life, anxiety, stress, how they're treating their family. And it might only be one of those body parts that's affected. And if you see only one doctor that doesn't recognize the other issues because they're not doing a full evaluation of all of the symptoms, a TBI could easily go undetected for a very long time, right? It's just assumed, oh, you had a headache. It's gonna resolve over time. Well, if you have a traumatic brain injury, it might not resolve. If we changed our whole model really to making sure that we're very carefully talking to clients about their symptomology, doing questionnaires, sending them questionnaires, especially to rule out things like TBI and things like that. And then we're making sure that we're communicating with the medical practitioner. So it's a very well-rounded system and everybody's sharing information together to make sure that the client gets the best treatment, gets 100% of everything resolved before we even consider settling or valuing that case. And that then drives up your value of your cases because you're taking better care of your clients.
I've heard you say this before, where you reference that a lot of attorneys miss value, settlement value for their clients in regards to soft tissue cases. I would love to hear you talk a little bit more about that as well as.
I mean, a soft tissue case simply means that there's no objective finding. So an MRI, a CAT scan, any form of testing isn't going to show an injury. So it's assumed, if that's the case, that the person has a soft tissue injury, right? So
Yeah.
sprains, strains, something like that. And the problem is that often, depending on who the treating doctor is and what their practice is, they don't necessarily, oh, you were in a car accident. Oh, you have a lawyer. Okay. And so they don't necessarily send the person for an MRI to figure out what's going on. Or that person is treating with a chiropractor who never sends them out for an MRI and discharges them. It's going to take a long time. It's a deep soft tissue injury and it goes undetected. And then you find out later that you really had a herniated disc or some other issue. It's important to listen to the client. And the reason the AMA guidelines say, for instance, if you're not getting better by 6 to 8 weeks, objective testing becomes necessary. So if someone's treating a patient and by 8 weeks, they're not getting any better, then you need an MRI to determine, rule out other types of injuries, which then open the door to different types of treatments. It's just a matter of using all of the tools that exist and making sure that you're applying the right rules.
Thank you for covering all that. You found value, not just in volume of cases, but spending more time working these cases. And like you said, focusing on the medicals, focusing on the treatment for each of your clients in order for them to get they get the better treatment and they also get the better outcomes by working with you and your firm and your attorneys. So now that we talked about that, now I would love to talk to you more about optimization, because there's a lot that you do at your practice, from intake all the way down to the way your attorneys work.
This ties to the last thing you said and what you just said now. So you mentioned volume versus value, right? There's only really 3 ways for a law firm to make more money, right? You either bring in more cases, so you increase your volume. You work your cases harder, better, and more in depth, so you really know them, and increase the value based on proper medical management, setting up liability well, making sure you're doing a good job of negotiating and tracking adjusters, and build value. Or you're controlling your expenses so that you're running a really good business. You don't let your expenses get out of control. There's no way to drop more money to the bottom line than those 3 things. So from the perspective of optimization, right, that ties into all 3. In order to build volume, you have to have the right system and right processes in place, starting at intake. If you haven't really set up a great intake system, if you're increasing your volume, so think of intake as almost a strainer. There's a ton of holes. So when the phone rings, because we're spending a lot of money on marketing, so to bring in more cases, I have to spend more money. If I made widgets, it would be much easier, right? I sell a widget for $1. It takes me 50 cents to make, 10 cents to make it. I sell it for $1. I make 90 cents on the spot. That's it. Immediate. In a personal injury case, I have to spend money up front to build brand, right? To create a call to action and get the phone to ring. So I'm front loading my marketing dollars. And then to run that case, all of my labor cost, I don't recoup the money from the phone ringing until however long it takes me to settle that case. Maybe let's say a year is, let's say, the average time to settle a pre-litigation case. And then a litigation case is going to depend what state you're in. So I'm in Rhode Island as one of my states, which is nationwide the absolute worst state to run cases in litigation. There is no docket control. No judge says, this is going to be the date that we're doing motions. This is the date that we're going to close. This is the date that we're going to have a trial date. The lawyers control the date, and you could go 2, 3, 4, 5 years. And so imagine I spent X number of dollars to bring that case in, X number of dollars in labor. I have to explain to my client that your case can't settle. It needs to go to litigation. And it's going to be, another 3 years. It's crazy. The optimization that you refer to along that path, every time there's a hole, there's a waste of resources. You're increasing your costs. You're taking longer time on desk, and you're losing money or losing cases upfront in intake every time you put somebody on hold, as an example. I just had a catastrophic accident. I've never been in a car accident before. I've never called an attorney for help. I have no idea what to expect. But I know, hey, I saw this guy on TV, or my friend gave me this guy's name. I need help. You answer the phone. Thanks for calling law firm. Please hold. That's your initial experience for a law firm that hasn't figured out how to manage intake and how to handle new clients. And then you could sit on hold for a minute and a half, 2 minutes, 3 minutes. How long are you going to sit on hold before you hang up and say, this is ridiculous, I'm calling someone else? Or they start transferring you around the office. So yeah, optimization, like I could talk about intake for hours. Optimization is super important because let's just say your average fee is $10,000, right?
Mhm.
And there's law firms whose average fee, because they pick only larger cases, $20, $50, $100,000. Let's keep it simple and low, $10,000. Every time someone hangs up the phone, you should be thinking as the business owner, that could be 10 grand out the window. And if I look at someone's numbers, I could tell you exactly how much is out the window because it's easy to calculate how many calls come in, and of the leads that come in, what percentage turns to cases, and of the cases that come in, what percentage of those turn to a win case I
Mhm.
make money on. Based on that number, I look at your hangups of loans, right? Because I can tell, right, in your phone bill, when I look at your numbers, how many people hung up before talking to a human being. That number alone, that's just one hole in the strainer. We talked about the hole in the strainer. That's
Mhm.
one hole in the strainer. Imagine someone only gets one hang up a day. So, and only 5 days a week, 5 hang-ups a day. And let's say that they accept 50% of the calls that come in. So now we're at 2.5, and they win 80% of the cases. So that's, we'll call it 1.5 cases. So 1.5 cases a week they're losing from their hangups at, what is that? 75 cases a year at 10,000 a piece. That's $750,000. I don't know, is my math right? So it's a
I'll
lot of
trust your
money.
math. I'm not doing it in my head, but
Yeah, it's a lot of money. That's one of the holes. I could give you the average 5 holes that are in an intake center. And people never really think about it, and they never look at those numbers.
separately, you've also implemented some things to make your entire firm more effective on the attorney level because your attorneys are also leveraging tools as well. And obviously, we know that you're leveraging AI in your firm. I wanted to talk to you a little bit more about how that has impacted your attorneys and maybe their effectiveness or efficiencies, or even how it impacts the clients that you serve as well.
As you know, we use Faster Outcomes as our platform for AI. And so, the use of AI changing everything, like it's insane. And we're only, in my opinion, at Faster Outcomes in the world today, in my law firm, scratching the surface of where AI is going to go. But the key is to start now, because if you wait, you lose the momentum and you have all of your competitors who are doing it. It's not that not using AI puts you out of business. It's the other law firms who are using AI are going to surpass you for a million different reasons across marketing and all
Mhm.
of that piece. And then using AI in your intake center, using AI in your process map. So from liability to case management to medical management to liens to tracking your
Mhm.
negotiations, and it's changes everything, right? So first of all, it makes us way more efficient, right? So I'll give you an example that is completely out of the box and has nothing to do with PI, but literally did it last night. I had a friend who was traveling from St. Martin to San Juan, and they lost her luggage. And so the airline was just making up shit and making excuses and doesn't want to give her money. And she had electronics in her bag, and she had a Starlink system in her portable, all sorts of stuff. And I went on AI, which if I had done the research manually, it would have taken forever. And I gave it the prompt and I gave all the information, and it gave me back all of the regulations of the fact that it comes under the Montreal Convention regulations for travel because of where it is, and it didn't start in the US. But then it also talked about how it could come under the FAA regulations based on certain things that you could use that. And I read all the regulations, verified sources. Then I told it to draft a letter for me. Then I added the letter. I told it to make it more aggressive. And probably in under an hour, what would have taken me, 20 hours probably, worth of time to do what I did for her, It's insane. And so in personal injury, it's the same thing. Imagine you have a medical case and you have 1,000 pages of medical records, right? And so we use your system to do medical chronologies. To have to read the most basic thing, I want to make sure that for every medical record, I have the matching bill and everything is corresponding. So just to go through all of the records and read to make sure it doesn't reference another doctor, because often the client forgets to say, oh, I treated with Dr. Smith. They forget to tell me they treated with 6 doctors. And so AI picks up in the records that they were referred to Dr. Smith. And then it's going to tell me that we don't have any records here for Dr. Smith and there's no billing. So I immediately realize, hey, David, I'm just going through your records. I see there was a reference to Dr. Smith. Oh, yeah, I saw him. That's right. I forgot to tell you that. I'm sorry. Something as simple as that, but you have to read 1,000 pages of medical records just to find that little nugget of information. And not that you shouldn't be reading your medical records, but it's a fast way to create summaries, get information, ask questions, things that I don't understand that are in the medical records. And I can say to the agent, hey, I don't understand this. Can you explain it to me? Okay, so need a little bit more direct causation link between the heart attack and that. But in Social Security, for instance, to have causation linked, there's very specific things, looking at the Blue Book and looking at do we meet a listing? If not meeting a listing, do the symptoms meet something similar to the listing? Does a doctor say that they're not capable of any form of gainful employment? Things that we can really use AI to do and search a tremendous amount of information in a very short period of time. So it helps us build value. It helps us save time on desk. It helps us stay more organized. It's better for communication. I mean, there's a million reasons to be using AI. And all of those things are things that we're using Faster Outcomes for.
So there's a lot to unpack with what you said, a lot of interesting information that you shared regarding the overall efficiencies and impact of leveraging AI in your firm and helping to reduce attorney fatigue, which is huge, right? Reviewing if you're working a medical malpractice case and you're looking through thousands upon thousands of records, just trying to find those nuggets of information can be difficult, and being able to go back and verify your work and have someone else to fact check you or double check you and will impact the outcome of your case and how effectively you can actually work a matter. So that being said, what other nuggets would you like to share? What other things would you like to leave other attorneys that may be starting their own PI firm or already have a small to medium-sized PI firm or just getting started in general? What nuggets of information would you like to share to help offer some guidance to those individuals?
I just presented to the student body at Roger Williams Law School, and I went in with like 45 slides in a PowerPoint, knowing that I had no intention of using them all. But, you know, when I speak at conferences, I really know what I'm going to speak on, and I have a very well-polished presentation. And I'm speaking to CEOs or maybe chief marketing officers, whoever's in the audience, and they know what the topic is and their experience. The students, I had no idea, like, what is going to be of interest to them, what's going to click. And it was interesting. AI was a huge topic that they wanted to address, but also kind of the general theme of being a lawyer. And so what nuggets do I want to drop? One of the things that I told them, and I think that is for all of us to remember, is I pointed out, I said, you know, what does it take to be a good human? And so we created a list of things to be a good human. And then I kind of switched topics a little bit. And then I said, okay, let's talk about what it takes to be a good lawyer. And so we have a list over here. And then I said, let's look at the 2 lists. And I said, is there any reason I can't be a good human and be a good lawyer? Oh, of course not. In order to be a good lawyer, you need to be a good human. Now, what if you're not a good human? Can you be a good lawyer? And the reality is no. And so I think that we have to remember that, right? We have to be good humans, right? It's important to take care of other people. When you talk to new lawyers and ask them why they want to be a lawyer, everybody wants to make a difference. Everybody wants to have an impact. Everybody wants to help people. But I think when we get caught up in the daily grind, right, and we're trying to churn out hours and turn cases, and we lose sight of the fact that that case that I'm working on belongs to another human being. It's their life. They've entrusted me to help them and make a difference for them. So simple things like remembering to pick up the phone when they call and answer the phone, or call them back, have communication and share with them what's happening in their case. Knowledge is power. So by sharing information that keeps them informed and build trust between you and them. Those are the basics, right? And we all knew it when we started, but I definitely see it. We start to forget it when we have that stress bubble happening and the anxiety of what we have to get done in the day. So it's always important to remember to go back to basics and remember, right? This is an important part of why I became a lawyer, and I really have to take care of my client. There's a nugget for you.
That's awesome. That's a great answer, Rob. Thank you so much for joining us once again. This has been another episode of Legal Keys. I'm your guest host signing off, J.A. Tittle. And thank you guys. Take care.